All right, this meeting is now being recorded. Tom, go for it. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me be here. I'm more than happy to share this information. So I'm Tom Nelson, Third District PTA, current president, will be the incoming vice president of leadership for our Third District PTA. And over the time that I've been on the Third District PTA, which has been about 8 years, there's been probably 24 or more of our units that I've helped get Google for Nonprofits accounts so they can have their own website and their own email addresses. And I put my contact information up there, so feel free to contact me if you have any questions. I'm also happy to be a volunteer to submit the application on your behalf if you want me to do that. So now in submitting applying for a Google for Nonprofits account, I break it down into kind of two main things. One is preparation, do your homework. And then the second part of this presentation is the application process, which are the steps. That second part go through pretty fast. Whether you do it yourself or you ask me to submit the application on your behalf, there's still preparation that you have to do. So I'll start with preparation. So getting together the information that will be needed during the application process. So having your letter of determination, because during the application process, it will ask for the legal name, it will ask for the tax ID number, the EIN. And also, depending upon how you answer some questions, it may ask for other things to be submitted. So I say you should have your group exemption letter, which is one that actually has the IRS letterhead on it, and a copy of your bylaws. This is somewhat similar to whenever you've opened a new bank account that they check that. Now, another aspect is once they sort of take a look at the organization, they may also want to verify that the person submitting the application is a authorized volunteer or a member of that organization. So one of the ways they do that is they've asked or submit a voided check or a bank letter or a redacted bank statement. Their theory is that only people that have been given that information, those voided checks by the official officers of the organization, then that sort of verifies the person submitting the application as that. And being aware of who you want to be the administrators. There's actually a couple of levels of administration that I'll mention in detail later. In the application process, they'll ask for a website reference. They tend to use that website reference to look up your organization. And if you have names on your website of people, whether they're officers or other people associated with it, they can kind of use that as a method to verify the person submitting the application is actually a member of that organization. The application process also asks for a mission statement. Now, when your application was sent in for being a charitable trust, that is where a mission statement has been put, and it's actually filed with the Attorney General. I don't think they actually check that, but if you're looking for what do you put in for the mission statement, that's a place you can find it. The process is first to verify your organization and that's where they ask for this information. And the process of verification is done by a organization called GoodStack. You're applying for a Google for Nonprofits. Google itself doesn't want to be in the business of verifying all these different nonprofit organizations that may be putting in applications. So they basically contract to a company called GoodStack. They're based out of the United Kingdom, and they do the verification, I think, worldwide. So, so and they verify your organization, but they then also, by looking at the tax ID number, finding it on like an IRS letterhead or IRS website. But then they also want to check that you're a representative. So that's where I mentioned the voided bank statement. And you should have an email address, because part of the application is submitting an email address. So if they have questions, and frequently happens, there may be some sort of communication back and forth for who's submitting the application. But this is just an example of a letter of determination, which you probably know how to find. And if not, Donna Broussard can send you a current one. And also, Donna can send you the IRS group exemption letter. One of the things that can be kind of confusing that I find GoodStack, and for that matter, sometimes banks, they don't have a good understanding of group exemptions, where there is a parent organization, in this case, the California PTA, and then every PTA unit in California is considered a subordinate. And that's why our letter of determinations are on PTA letterhead and not IRS letterhead. Like I said, your mission statement can be found on your CT1 application. It's really because this is a template that comes from the California State PTA. I think virtually every unit probably has essentially the same mission statement. And here is the mission statement. I basically put in simply changing the first name of the PTA unit at the beginning for, like I say, about 24 of units in our district that I've submitted this for. When they haven't found, when I've done this as a volunteer for the units, and they've sometimes said, well, we don't see your name on that unit website, or we don't see your name on these letters of determination, please send us a voided check or something. So here are some examples of voided checks. I blurred out the actual account number there, but so these are some examples of things that I have submitted to basically prove that the person submitting the application is authorized by the unit. It can be a bank statement, it can be a voided deposit ticket. So these are just 3 examples. As part of the application, there's actually, you're dealing with 3 different organizations to set up your Google for Nonprofits workspace. So the Google Workspace, the first one is talking to GoodStack to get verified that you prove you're a nonprofit and you prove that you're authorized to submit the application. Once GoodStack approves it, then it basically goes over to the Google Nonprofits, and you have an account there. You can log into your, once GoodStack approves you can log into your Google for Nonprofits account as an administrator. But a Google Nonprofits account administrator is different from a Google Workspace administrator. So when you're first a Google for Nonprofits administrator, that's where you can then request a product activation of the Google Workspace. And then the Google team is the one that you're then communicating with there on step 2. And as setting up for the Google Workspace, that Google Workspace needs an internet name, a domain name, which would be part of which will, when you get a website, be part of your website. It will be part of your own email addresses when you set that up. And that is the one thing that there is an annual cost on. So this is actually where that debit card policy helps, because you can put in the debit card when you register your domain name with Squarespace or GoDaddy or whoever it is you happen to choose to register your domain name with. And so there's actually 3 different accounts. There's the Google for Nonprofits account, and that's kind of who manages the submitting the request for Google products. Then when you get your Google Workspace, you have a Google Workspace administrator. And that Google Workspace administrator then can create, all the email addresses of president, treasurer, secretary at your organization. But and then also you have to have a domain name. So when you set up that domain name account with Squarespace or GoDaddy, then you have an account administrator of the domain name. So sort of keep in mind that you have these different accounts and administrators for each one of them. Frequently it's the same person, but it could be different people. So the Google for Workspace nonprofits, that's who administers the accounts. And so these are the 3 types of administrators. So that's the preparation that you kind of sets the framework for preparing. And then I've got sort of step by step where I've done screen captures. So if you decide to submit the application yourself, you can kind of use this to help guide you and know what to expect before you submit the application. So the first place to go is to the Google Nonprofits website. So that's www.google.com/nonprofits. There you'll log in, sign in with a sign in with a email address that will be used for communicating to you concerning the Google account. Ask for password. If lots of us have multiple Google accounts, so make sure you choose the right one and keep track of it. I think I've got half a dozen or more accounts that I have to manage. And during the application process, so these are sort of the step-by-step, it does a little bit of information. You're asked where your organization is registered, which would be in the United States. And this is where you have your tax ID number ready. And here's where it tells you Good Stack will verify your organization. So you're at that step 1. Now, when you put in your tax ID number, it will do a search. And it may come up with the name of the California State PTA instead of your own unit. I'm not sure how sometimes it comes up, but because every unit is a subordinate underneath the California State PTA, it might come up with one or the other name. Hopefully it will come up with the actual name of the unit. In which case you simply click on it and then proceed. In either case, you will click on it and proceed, because if it finds it, then it's really the EIN number that differentiates it. And if it doesn't find it at all, then you can click on Add My Organization, and it will take a slightly different path where it will ask, that's where it'll probably ask for submitting your bylaws and maybe your letter of determination. So if it doesn't find it, for the most part, it should find your organization, unless you're, say, for example, a really new unit. And it'll ask where you, when you put in the tax ID, use the IRS one. There is actually choices in there where you could say use the California, but what I found when I tried doing that for a new unit, because they were actually You could find the registration for a new unit on the Attorney
Is
General
what?
California site. But that wasn't on the IRS site, but in the end, they still wanted the IRS tax ID number. So might as well just put in that your registry organization is the IRS when you register. And this is where it asks for a website of your organization. Now, if you don't have one, you can put in, yeah, well, I put in like the Totem account website because Totem creates if you have Totem as your membership online membership way, then Totem should have a website for you. But it's probably better to put in actually a social media website because on that you can put in on the social media website who the people are that are administrators. So if they find your name there, then it can kind of make things move faster instead of going, oh, that way they'll see your name there and they then may not have to ask for like those voided checks or other documentation. So and that's why I tend to find putting in a social media website seems to make the process run a little bit quicker and smoother. And I did check with them. I asked GoodStack, well, one of the reasons units are asking to get a Google for Nonprofits is they don't have a website. So that's where GoodStack said, that's okay, go ahead and use a social media site. As part of the application process, there's different categories it'll ask. So the primary category is school education, and then the subcategory is a parent organization. Those are drop-down selections. So just select and move before moving on to the next screen. Here is where it asks for the contact information. Now, this can be important because if there's questions, then this is the person they will be asking for information about it. So simply fill in name, position, if you have a position. When I've volunteered, sometimes I've just put job title volunteer when I was submitting it on behalf of another unit. So once you fill that in, then check off you agree to the terms and conditions, and then that submits the application to GoodStack. And it takes here they give a message. It may take 2 to 14 business days for them to review for GoodStack to review the application. When they get the application almost immediately, because you put in your email address, they want to verify, they'll send a message to that email address you put in where you click a verified link and then it gets verified. So then if they have questions during that period while they review the application, they'll be emailing you and perhaps asking questions or more information. So in one case, they didn't find my name, so they did find the name of like the president on the social media website. So in this case, GoodStack actually emailed the president and said, hey, it's Tom Nelson, a legitimate person volunteering for your organization. So she responded, yes, and then it was able to proceed from there. Once GoodStack verifies the organization is a nonprofit and you're a legitimate volunteer for that organization, you'll get this message, and then it moves on to the Google for Nonprofits team. And at that point, you have this is where you have the first administrator, the administrator of the Google for Nonprofits. So when you get that, you're able to log in as a Google for Nonprofits. Again, that's not the Google Workspace administrator. This is the Google for Nonprofits administrator because you haven't gotten the Google Workspace approval yet. Now, one of the first things I recommend is once you're in there, add another administrator. I'm a big believer of not having a single point of failure. And just like for signing checks, you want to have frequently that's why you have three people, because if somebody is out sick, then you have somebody else to cover. So I recommend always add, as soon as you get an account, add another administrator on there. Then, as now that you are a Google for Nonprofits administrator, this is where you now can try to basically submit to have the Google Workspace activated. And this, because the Google Workspace requires a domain name, it'll it has its own questions, which are now really questions that are going to Google for Nonprofits. And for all of, whenever I've submitted this, I've said, no, we don't use Google Workspace yet. And then it'll ask, in the next screen, it'll ask, do you have a domain name? You want to look up and find a good domain name that you'd want to use, because that's going to be your identity. And that tends to be something that you want to think about, because it's going to be rather permanent. That's how people will get to know you, and that's how people will be emailing people at your PTA. Now it will then, as you put it in now, if you don't have a domain name yet, then you can put in something there anyway, and it will actually say take you. You put in information about your organization, because you need that domain name. And when it asks how many units or how many people are part of your organization, I just kind of consider those that are on the executive board as the number of employees. So I've always just put in 2 to 9 there. Now, again, this is where it asks for an email address, because now you'll be communicating with the Google for Nonprofits team. This is which is different from the Good Stack team. And this is also where when they get authorized to be a administrator for a Google for Workspace, this is the administrator account that they'll be giving that information to. And it'll ask you, does your organization have a domain name? This is where I have always really recommend putting no. Even if you have a domain name, if you have your own domain name, then it's actually more kind of difficult, because there's another set of having to do a connection between the domain name that you got with Squarespace or GoDaddy or Wix, of having that connected to the website services that is the Google Workspace. So it actually works, seems to work a lot smoother when I say, no, I need one. And it Google works with Squarespace. So you can put in and search for a domain name, and it will then look, and this is where it actually kind of does the mapping and connects with Squarespace. And it will say, it'll find a domain name. This is where it will then say that domain name will be this amount of money per year. And put in the information here, that this information, I believe this then actually gets sent to Squarespace for then helping to set up the domain name and the billing for it. So fill in that information. Google, like I said, Google offers this Squarespace connection. And here now this is important, because when when Google actually then activates your Google Workspace, it creates the first administrator account, which is a super admin account. And that will be the first and only account that you get. Once you're authorized, once the account Google Workspace is activated, this is the account and password and the only one that will get you in at the beginning. After you're in, then you can start creating as many Google accounts. You can make other Google accounts that are super administrators. But I did have one unit where I said, oh, I got you to this step and now you can take it from there. They took it from there and they forgot the password, and it took a lot of going back and forth with Google to have them reset that first super admin account so we could log in and create other ones. If once that domain name is linked and Google team is happy with it, you've paid for your domain name with the domain register, then you're linked and you're basically off and ready to go. When you first submit the activation, as a Google as a Google nonprofits administrator, it will report the status that you have requested activation. So you can kind of check on the status by logging in as a Google nonprofits administrator to see how far along it is and Google creating the account. So then you would become a Google Workspace administrator. Yeah, if you already have a domain name, like I say, you can use that, but then there are additional steps involved in having to link that domain name to your Google Workspace. Like I say, don't forget the account. And then once it's activated and you first log into that first super admin account, and every account that you create, the first time you log into it, they give you this welcome to your new account message, and you click I understand. I think, and when you create your accounts, I recommend that you put in recovery information so that if somehow you forget the password or somehow gets reset, then you can recover access to the account by having a recovery email account and or a recovery phone number. And I think, let's see, that's pretty much most of it. When you do get a domain name, I highly recommend that you get a domain name that ends in a .org. So it's consistent with the California State PTA, the National PTA, and most other PTAs that have gotten their own websites. And I think that also, just for kind of consistency, before the .org, it's very common to have PTA as the letters before the .org. And that's pretty much my presentation. Again, here's my email address. Feel free to contact me. I'm happy to do what I can to support. I'd love as many PTAs to have their own websites and have their own email addresses. The idea of having the email addresses owned by the PTA instead of personal ones, I think that's highly recommended, and it can save grief down the road. At this point, that's my presentation, and I'll just see if there's any questions. Okay.
So, well, they're unmuting. There you go.
We have questions, Melinda. I just recently went through this a couple of months ago with the Nonprofit Sports Association, and Good Stack required me to have a letter of determination, a copy of a voided check, and a copy of my badge associated with the association. and we didn't have official badges with the youth sports. And so I went into Canva and had to make something up that looked like an official badge. I mean, I went through it once. I tried to take a screenshot of our website with the domain name on it, showing our list of officers. They didn't like that. They wanted a copy of the badge.
Yeah, I have found, because there's probably been half a dozen different people sometimes over the number of times that I've submitted and had to have communications with Good Stack. So I think it can depend a lot on how experienced the person is that you get. Like I said, a lot of, even both Good Stack and Google really have difficulty in some cases, understanding the difference between the parent organization and that units are subordinate organizations. Yeah, whatever, whatever works. Like you mentioned, it's not uncommon that you have to have various back and forth with them before they actually believe that you're submitting this legitimately for a legitimate organization and you're a legitimate volunteer or member of that organization.
Thank you. Any other questions for Tom?
Is this a process that needs to happen every year? Like if one's already set up for our PTSA, is that
Yes. Yeah, once it's already set up for a PTSA, it's good. And as far as I have seen, because some I have set up years ago, those PTAs actually disbanded and the accounts are still good. So yeah, once it's set up, there is not any. The only thing that is a renewal is your domain name, but that's with whoever your domain registrar is. And so you can register a domain name for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years.
Thank you.
Sure.
That was so great. I wish I had seen this last year. I'm wondering, do you have any best practices for establishing the workspace itself? Like once we've gone through this process for the different roles and then like folders, naming conventions, all that stuff. So we're not recreating the wheel on like structure of organization.
Yeah, actually our treasurer did a wonderful job because she set up when people are logging in and have their own account. So most commonly is creating one for the president, treasurer, secretary. Depending upon how big the unit is, you may create others. So when having that login with that domain name, then underneath the Google Drive, there is a place where you have shared drives. So you can create shared drives there, and our treasurer laid out a nice structure. So we have, as a district, we have a place for the financials, a place for minutes, a place for agendas, a place for the bylaws, but I guess the sort of details of how you decide who has full access to delete and add things versus who you decide to just have read access. My tendency is to try and make as many things open for read access, but then only like the president, treasurer, and maybe other trusted people on the executive board can make changes and delete things from the shared file folders.
Thank you.
And a lot of it will depend upon the level of technical knowledge and comfort you have of whoever your Google Workspace administrator is, and how sophisticated they want to lay out things. But most commonly, I see most common is just creating a few of the executive board logins.
Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Anything
Well,
else, Tom?
yeah.
No, thank you, Tom. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and virtually come and talk to us, so thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Like I said, it's great to see, because the only district board meetings I've attended have been our own, and it's really nice to get the perspective of seeing another one. So thank you. All right, I will take off. Thank you. Have a good rest of your meeting.
You as well, Tom.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Okay, so we are now going to move on to our next presentation. Everybody's doing okay? Okay, Amy. Oh, let's see, sorry, I have to plug my laptop in. We are looking at financial basics for PTA now.
Great, so I have an important question. Who's driving the slides?
That's what I was going to ask too. Who will be screen sharing?
I can do that, but if I do that, who's going to advance them? Do you want to just tell me next slide each time?
I'm okay with that, if you're okay.
Yeah, give me 1 second to bring that up.
See, we were all set up here. We've got a clicker, we've got everything. It just crashed if you weren't here for that. So sorry, we're plan B. We're pivoting. That's what we're all about.
And I am gonna stand up because I have a tendency to like to move and it helps me stay focused. Feel free to like stretch when we're getting set up because I know it's been a while. I walked in late, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Amy O'Connor. I am the outgoing, so I can now say was,
We have
financial.
2 more days.
Yes.
Please don't say outgoing.
I am the outgoing financial reviewer for the 24th district. I have served on the Kermit King board, Kermit King Elementary PTA board for 4 years? No, 3, and then 4. Next year will be 4. This year is 3. 2 of those years were as treasurer, and one of those years was secretary. I'm gonna be on the board as the VP of special projects, but I have a toddler at home, and that is eating up my time.
Say no more. Bucket list, what's your bucket list item?
Oh, I'm getting there.
I'm
Getting there. He's teething